Welcome to Math with Mr. J.
In this video, I'm going to cover how to convert between fractions and percents. Fractions to percents and percents to fractions. Let's start with fractions to percents, starting with number 1, where we have 4/5. Now, when we convert fractions to decimals, we can divide the numerator by the denominator, so the top divided by the bottom, and that will give us a decimal. Once we have that decimal, we can multiply it by 100 to get it to a percent. Now remember, a quick way to multiply by 100 is to move the decimal twice to the right. So basically, we go from fraction to decimal to percent. So for number 1, we need to do 4 divided by 5. So let's set this up. 4 divided by 5. In this video, I'm going to work through the division by hand. As far as 4 divided by 5, how many whole groups of 5 in 4? How many 5s in 4? Well, we can't do that, so we need a decimal and a 0 to continue the problem. And I'm going to extend this division bar here and then bring the decimal straight up into the quotient, the answer. Now remember, zeros to the right of a decimal or to the right of decimal digits do not change the value of the number. So we're able to do this in order to work through the division problem. And now we can think of this as 40 divided by 5. How many whole groups of 5 in 40? How many 5s in 40? Well, 8. That gets us to 40 exactly. So we need to put the 8 above this 0 since we used the 4 and the 0 here and thought of it as 40. So again, 8 above the 0. Now we multiply. 8 times 5 is 40. Subtract. 40 minus 40 is 0. Nothing else to bring down within our problem. And we have that clean cut 0. We are done with the division. So our answer, 0.8, 8/10. That's our decimal. Now we need to convert that to a percent. So I'm going to write it off to the side here. And I'm going to start with a 0, then the decimal, and then 8. So 8/10. And I started with a 0 and then the decimal. That helps us recognize we are working with a decimal. It helps us see the decimal. So now that we have this decimal, we need to multiply it by 100 to get it to a percent. And again, we can quickly multiply something by 100 by moving the decimal twice to the right. So once, twice, decimal goes here, and we can fill this gap, this place, with a 0. So we get 80. 4/5 equals 80%. So to recap, divide the numerator by the denominator. That's going to give us a decimal. Then we need to convert that decimal to a percent by multiplying it by 100. Let's move on to number 2, where we have 3/8. So we need to start by dividing the numerator by the denominator. So 3 divided by 8. Now 3 divided by 8, how many whole groups of 8 in 3? Well, we can't do that. So we need a decimal and then a 0. I'll extend the division bar here, and then we need to bring the decimal straight up. Now we can think of this as 30 divided by 8. So how many whole groups of 8 in 30? Well, 3. And that 3 needs to go above the 0 since we looked at that as 30. So again, put the 3 above the 0. Then we multiply. 3 times 8, 24. Subtract. 30 minus 24 is 6. Now we don't have a clean cut 0 at the bottom, so we need to continue on. Let's use another 0 that we can bring down. So now we have 60. 60 divided by 8. How many whole groups of 8 in 60? Well, 7. That gets us to 56. 7 times 8, 56. 60 minus 56 is 4. So we need to continue on. Let's use another 0. Bring that down. And now we have 40. 40 divided by 8. That gives us 5. And we hit 40 exactly here. 5 times 8 is 40. Subtract 40 minus 40 is 0. Nothing else to bring down within our problem, and we have that clean cut 0. So we are done. So we have our decimal, 0.375, 375 thousandths. Let's convert this to a percent. So I'm going to write it off to the side here. And we need to multiply it by 100. And we can do that by moving the decimal once, twice to the right. So we end up with 37.5%. Now, before we move on, I do want to mention, what happens if we don't get to that clean cut 0? What happens if that decimal keeps going? In that case, my suggestion, go to 4 decimal digits, so the 10,000ths place, and then round to the nearest thousandth. Then once we round to the nearest thousandth, multiply by 100 to get it to a percent. And this will give us a percent rounded to the nearest tenth. If you'd like to see an example, check the description for a video on this. Moving on to numbers 3 and 4, we have percents and we are converting them to fractions. Looking at number 3, we have 60%. Now remember, percent means per 100, or we can think of it as for each 100 or out of 100. So all we need to do here is take away the percent symbol and rewrite these with a denominator of 100. Once we have the fraction, we can simplify if possible. So for number 3, we have 60%, which is 60 over 100 as a fraction. And that's it. 60% equals 60 hundredths. We are correct here, but this fraction can be simplified. We have a greatest common factor of 20 that we can divide the numerator and denominator by. So we get 60 divided by 20 is 3, and then 100 divided by 20 is 5. 3/5 is in simplest form. The only common factor between 3 and 5 is 1, so we are done here. So to recap, we rewrote 60% as a fraction, 60 over 100, and then we simplified that fraction to 3/5. Let's take a look at another one here. So let's move on to number 4, where we have 21%. So 21 is our numerator, and then 100 is our denominator. So we get 21 over 100, 21 hundredths. Now that fraction is in simplest form. The only common factor between 21 and 100 is 1, so we are done here. 21% equals 21 hundredths as a fraction. So there you have it. There's how to convert between fractions and percents. Fractions to percents and percents to fractions. I hope that helped. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, peace.